I stood up from the table, napkin in hand, and said, "If I'm not real family, I'll leave." Their stunned faces told me they never thought I would. Hey there. Thanks for clicking on today's story. Wherever you are right now, on a walk, doing the dishes, or just needing a little space to breathe, this one's for you. Today, we dive into a story about a woman who showed up for her family, only to realize they hadn't saved her a seat. Not just at dinner, but in their lives. Have you ever felt like the extra piece in your own family puzzle? So stay with me, because the way she chooses to stand up, not just for herself but for her self-worth, might just leave you thinking about your own story a little differently. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, raw, real, and maybe a little too relatable, hit that subscribe button so I can keep bringing them to you. Let's get into it.
They say family vacations are where memories are made. What they don't tell you is sometimes those memories come with receipts. I'm Sloan Whitaker, 33, creative director of a New York branding agency, and someone who spent a lifetime being the emotional afterthought in a family obsessed with appearances and tradition. When my mother Evelyn texted our family group chat about bringing everyone together for a beach getaway at Myrtle Shore, I surprised myself by saying yes. It had been 5 years since I joined any family vacation. 5 years of polite declines, sudden work trips, and the occasional fake client crisis to avoid the guilt-ridden dinners, the offhanded comparisons to my sister Harper, and the quiet reminders that I was the other daughter, the one with ambition, but no husband, no child, no golden aura of family pride. But this year felt different. I was fresh off a career high, landing a major client in the hospitality industry. I was seeing someone, casually but promisingly, and after a few sessions with my therapist, Dr. Freya Monroe, I was feeling oddly open to the idea that things could shift. Maybe, I told myself, they've changed. Or maybe I have. So I booked my flight. I even offered to design the itinerary. I curated activity options, booked dinner reservations, and even found a local artist market I thought Mom would love. When I sent the family a PDF brochure of our beach adventure, Harper replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Dad didn't reply at all. Still, I held on to optimism like it was a fragile shell I might crack with doubt. The flight from JFK to Charleston was surprisingly smooth. I arrived a few hours before the rest of the family, checked into a nearby cafe, and reviewed a client pitch deck while sipping on something iced and aggressively overpriced. I watched the palm trees sway in the breeze and thought, maybe this won't be a disaster. Maybe we're all just adults now. When the text came through, "We're here," I practically jogged to meet them at the resort entrance. There they were, my parents, Evelyn and Douglas, still perfectly coordinated in color-blocked polos and crisp shorts, Harper, in her usual athleisure chic with baby pink nails, walking hand in hand with her husband Miles and their daughter Sienna. The moment I saw my niece, her face lit up and she ran toward me with that pure, unfiltered joy that only kids still carry. "Aunt Sloan," she yelled, "did you bring me city stickers again?" I laughed and knelt to her level. I brought something even better this time. Her eyes widened with delight. I'd curated a sketching kit, complete with erasable markers and watercolor pads, art supplies I wish someone had given me at her age. "Wow," she whispered. "Mom, look what Aunt Sloan got me." Harper smiled, polite and brief. "Thanks, that's sweet." It was the first of many moments that reminded me how hard I'd worked to be seen. Not just as the career one, but as someone who cared, someone who showed up. That night, our dinner at an Ocean View restaurant felt good. Not perfect, but easy enough to feel like maybe, just maybe, things had turned a corner. Dad even asked about one of my design campaigns. Harper didn't interrupt. Mom complimented my dress. It was a rare flicker of belonging. After dessert, we took photos in front of the sunset. I stood next to my mother, feeling the light on my face and the possibility in the air. And then came the moment that would unravel it all. We returned to the resort lobby, ready to check in. I let Harper go first with her family. Dad handled the front desk conversation like always. And then the clerk, her name tag read Natalie, paused. "I have 3 rooms under the name Whitaker," she said. My stomach dropped. "3?" I asked, stepping forward. Natalie nodded, eyes flicking from me to my father. "Yes, ma'am, 2 king rooms and 1 with 2 queens." There was a beat of silence. Harper glanced at me, then back at the fish tank in the lobby like nothing was wrong. Mom said, "You can stay with us, honey. The couch pulls out." Like it was obvious, like it was normal, like it had always been the plan. It was in that moment, standing in a 5-star resort with a suitcase full of carefully wrapped gifts and carefully balanced hope, that I realized they never booked a room for me. Not by mistake, by choice. I should set something right there in the lobby, something loud, something clever. But all that came out was a quiet, "Wait, what?" Natalie, the receptionist, offered a tight-lipped apology. "I'm sorry, Miss Whitaker. The reservation shows 3 rooms total." My father, cool as ever, nodded as if this were completely expected. "That's right. 1 for us, 1 for Harper's family, and 1, well, the room with 2 queens." He trailed off like he was waiting for me to fill in the rest, to make it okay, to fix their mistake, to contort myself into their plan like I'd done 100 times before. My mother chimed in, cheerful and oblivious. "The pull-out couch is in our suite, Sloan. It's actually quite nice. Your father and I tried it out during our last cruise." Right, of course they did. I stood there, blinking at them like I didn't recognize their faces. Maybe I didn't, or maybe I was finally seeing them without the filter of hope I kept applying every holiday. "No one thought to book me a room?" I asked. Not angrily, just stunned. Dad shrugged. "We were working with the resort's package deal. It capped at 3 rooms." "So you just assumed I'd sleep on a couch?" Harper cut in, balancing Sienna on her hip. "Honestly, it didn't seem like a big deal. You're used to solo travel. You've slept in yurts and Airbnbs and God knows what else, right?" She laughed lightly, like this was quirky, like I was just the bohemian sister with flexible standards and endless patience. I didn't laugh. They moved on quickly, collecting room keys and following the bellhop like nothing had happened, like I wasn't still standing in the marble lobby, trying to understand how I'd gone from guest to extra luggage. Later, in my parents' suite, I stared at the pull-out couch like it had insulted me personally. It wasn't just the couch, it was the message. You're not part of this core unit. You're not essential. You're optional. My mother unpacked like we were on a cruise ship. My father turned on golf. I sat on the edge of the couch with my suitcase still zipped, feeling like a stranger who'd wandered into someone else's vacation. "You're making that face," Mom said, folding a cardigan. "What face?" "The one that says you're about to spiral." I didn't respond. She sighed. "Sloan, you weren't excluded. We just worked with what we had. Besides, you're one person. Harper has a family." That word again. Family. As if it came with an asterisk. As if I was only adjacent to it. I didn't cry that night. I didn't storm out. I didn't make a scene. I went along with it, just like I always had. Ate dinner, sat through polite conversation, smiled when Dad toasted to togetherness. But inside, something was cracking. A small fracture along a line that had been under pressure for years. After everyone had gone to bed, I stepped out onto the balcony. The ocean was a black sheet stretched against the horizon, the moon lighting it just enough to remind me how far I'd traveled to be this close and still left out. I texted Dr. Monroe. They didn't book me a room. I'm on the couch, and it's not the couch that hurts. She didn't respond. It was late, but writing it down felt like the first honest thing I'd done since arriving. The next morning at breakfast, I tried to act normal. I really did. Until Harper made a comment, half a joke, half a jab. "So, how's the couch life treating you? Living that minimalist dream, huh?" I looked up. She was grinning, chewing on pineapple. Sienna was playing with crayons. Miles was scrolling his phone. My parents were talking about spa appointments. No one batted an eye. It hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was their version of normal, their hierarchy, Harper's comfort, my flexibility, a tradition I never agreed to, but always complied with. Later that afternoon, I walked to the concierge desk and asked if there were any suites available. The woman, Kindra, was apologetic but firm. "I'm so sorry. With the Realtor convention in town, we're at full capacity." Of course they were. I thanked her and sat in a quiet lounge with my planner, flipping pages I decorated weeks ago with color-coded highlighters and stickers, plans I had made, activities I had researched, excursions I had booked. And yet, no room. As if I could organize everything, but still be the one they forgot. That night, when Harper suggested everyone watch a movie in her room, I declined. No one asked why. And that's when it sank in. Not just the injustice, but the silence around it. The unspoken rule: Sloan will adjust. Sloan will be fine. Sloan doesn't need much. And for the first time in my adult life, I realized they were right about Morthu. I didn't need them. Not like this. Not anymore. If the couch had been the insult, then dinner was the breaking point. It was supposed to be a celebration. That's what my mother called it when she made the reservation. Let's treat ourselves tonight, something elevated. The kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices and the waitstaff doesn't blink when you say gluten sensitivity. We arrived dressed in our best resort casual. I wore a cream jumpsuit I had nearly returned twice before deciding I deserved to feel elegant, even if no one noticed. Spoiler alert, no one noticed. The restaurant was stunning, all reclaimed wood chandeliers and panoramic windows facing the Atlantic. If things had been different, if I'd had my own room, a sense of inclusion, a whisper of respect, I might have been able to appreciate the ambiance. But the tension followed me in like perfume I couldn't wash off. Our waiter, Jonathan, was the picture of composure, polite, quick, and suspiciously good at reading the emotional barometers of his tables. He dropped off drinks and ducked away like he knew we were the kind of family that cracked under clinking glasses and small talk. Harper took the lead, naturally. "Tomorrow, I was thinking we could do the water park. Sienna's been talking about it all week." "Sounds fun," Miles murmured without looking up. Mom smiled. "That'll be a treat for her." "I was actually hoping we could do the botanical garden," I offered, trying to match their tone. "They have a new sculpture trail, and I read there's a butterfly dome that's really—" "That sounds boring for Sienna," Harper interrupted, not even bothering to soften the blow. I blinked. "It's not just for kids. They have stuff for all ages." Harper sipped her wine. "But she's the only child here. Shouldn't we be prioritizing her experience?" I glanced at Mom, hoping for backup. She shrugged. She is the youngest. And there it was again, the hierarchy, the unspoken formula where I always came last, where my interests were optional, my needs negotiable. Jonathan returned for our orders. I wasn't hungry, but I ordered something anyway, because not eating would be making a thing out of nothing, and I'd had a lifetime of learning that nothing was code for your pain doesn't matter. After he left, I tried again. "This isn't about the butterfly garden. It's about feeling like an afterthought." Harper rolled her eyes. "Ugh, God, here we go." "No, you know what? Yeah, here we go. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending that this is fine." Dad finally looked up. "Sloan?" I cut him off. Don't Sloan me like I'm the one being unreasonable. I helped plan this trip. I rearranged client meetings. I booked dinner reservations for restaurants I'll probably eat alone at. And what did I get in return? "Come on," Harper said, smirking. "It's not that serious. It's just a room." It's never just a room, I snapped. It's always a signal. One that says I'm the extra, the spare, the one who's supposed to bend, to fold, to squeeze into the corner of your perfectly curated nuclear unit. Everyone went silent. Sienna, wide-eyed, whispered, "Is Aunt Sloane mad?" I looked at her and immediately softened. No, sweetie, not mad, just tired of pretending. Jonathan chose that exact moment to reappear, sensed the temperature in the room, and backed away with the grace of a seasoned diplomat. "You're making this awkward," hissed. I actually laughed, a small, humorless laugh. "That's rich. You've spent 2 days making passive digs and tossing me scraps of courtesy like I should be grateful." Mom finally spoke. "Okay, that's enough. We didn't exclude you, Sloane. You're taking this way too personally." Am I? I leaned forward, calm but pointed. "When was the last time you asked me about my job and actually listened? When did you ever plan a vacation with me in mind, instead of just squeezing me in last minute?" Dad cleared his throat, grasping for control. "Look, Harper has a child. It changes things." "And I don't have a child? So what? I don't matter?" "That's not what we're saying." "Then what are you saying?" Harper threw her napkin on the table. "You're being selfish." I met her glare. "Is it selfish to want a bed, a space, basic dignity?" "You always do this," she muttered. "You build up all this drama in your head and then explode." "That's because I've spent years swallowing it," I said, voice tightening, "and I'm done choking." No one spoke. The restaurant noise buzzed in the background, but at our table, it was like someone had hit mute. I took a breath, then stood. "Enjoy the water park," I said, placing my napkin on the table with careful precision. "And you're sweet, and your definition of family." Mom looked up, startled. "Sloane, where are you going?" I smiled. "I don't know, but not back to that couch." I walked away without looking back, without apologizing, without asking for anyone to follow. And for the first time that trip, maybe the first time ever, I felt like I had finally stepped out of their shadow and into my own light. The air outside the restaurant was cooler than I expected. Or maybe it was just the heat of that conversation still burning on my skin. I walked fast. Not because I had anywhere to be, but because I needed distance between me and the table where I'd finally said too much. Or, really, just enough. Back at the resort lobby, I stood under the soft halo of chandelier light, my phone trembling in my hand. I had 37 unread messages. Most of them were from my mom, one from my dad, and a few from Harper, alternating between anger and faux concern. "You need to calm down. We can figure this out tomorrow. You're being dramatic." And there it was, the golden word, dramatic. That's what they always said whenever I had feelings they didn't want to deal with. It was easier to call me fragile than to admit they'd been careless. I pocketed my phone and walked straight to the front desk. A woman with soft curls and a nameplate that read Amber greeted me with a kind but tired smile. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said, still catching my breath. "Do you have any rooms available? Anything, even a broom closet with a cot?" She laughed. "It's been one of those days?" "One of those decades." Amber typed into her computer. Her brow furrowed, then lifted. "You're lucky," she said. "We just had a last-minute cancellation, our oceanfront suite. It's the only room left." I didn't hesitate. "I'll take it." Her eyes flicked to my clothing, then back to her screen. "It's premium pricing." Even better. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. A few taps later, she handed me a keycard. "Room 1203, top floor, ocean view. It comes with a soaking tub and a stocked minibar." Perfect. I was in the mood to soak and drink at the same time. I made my way upstairs. The hallway smelled like linen and sea salt. My suite was a cathedral of silence and space. White cotton sheets, neutral tones, floor-to-ceiling windows that opened to the Atlantic, a terrace large enough to dance on, a bed that looked like it could forgive your worst days. And no one's luggage next to mine. No couch, no hierarchy, no passive-aggressive commentary about how I was too sensitive. I shut the door, tossed my purse, and collapsed onto the mattress fully dressed. Then I cried. Hard. Not because of the fight, not because of the couch, but because I had finally admitted to myself that I couldn't keep begging for a seat at a table that was never built for me. I cried for that 14-year-old version of me who'd slept on a rollaway at Disney while Harper got the queen bed. For the 22-year-old who skipped graduation because mom said her anniversary dinner couldn't be rescheduled. For the 29-year-old who showed up to Thanksgiving with a pie and left with a reminder that real families make babies, not branding campaigns. Then, silence. It washed over me like the ocean outside. I could hear it from the balcony, the waves crashing rhythmically, like applause from the universe. Finally, she gets it. I peeled off my jumpsuit, ran a bath, and poured an unreasonable amount of the lavender-scented bath salts into the water. The tub was so big I could stretch out and float if I wanted to. And for the first time, I wanted to. There was no one knocking on the bathroom door. No child needing bedtime. No voice asking what was for dinner. Just me, breathing. After the bath, I poured a glass of wine from the minibar and sat out on the balcony wrapped in a hotel robe that probably cost more than my first apartment's rent. Below me, the pool glittered under ambient lights. Couples strolled along the boardwalk. Somewhere in the distance, a jazz band played notes I didn't recognize but immediately loved. I should have felt lonely, but I didn't. I felt full. Like the absence of noise was, for once, not emptiness, but room for something new. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains like forgiveness. I stretched wide across the bed, indulging in the fact that I didn't have to tiptoe around anyone else's morning routine. No sister brushing Sienna's hair, no father flipping channels, just quiet, and a massive, overpriced room that was entirely mine. I ordered room service. Belgian waffles, whipped cream, strawberries, the works. I didn't count carbs or calories or comments. I just ate and drank coffee and stared at the ocean. My phone buzzed again. 20 more texts. I silenced it. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and searched coastal solo retreats near Myrtle. One of the first results was a photography and nature tour led by a local artist named Tyler Morgan. The bio said he specialized in untouched coastlines, hidden dune trails, and stories buried in the sand. Exactly my vibe. I booked a half-day tour for the following afternoon. Then I changed my return flight, pushed it out a week, extended my stay at the boutique hotel. If I was going to reclaim anything, it wouldn't be a twin bed in a shared suite. It would be this: time, space, sovereignty. That evening, I wandered the local market just off the boardwalk. I bought a handmade ceramic mug that didn't match anything I owned. I chatted with an older couple celebrating their retirement. I smiled at a little girl who reminded me of Sienna, minus the politics. And I found myself again. Not the version of me they tolerated. The real version. The one who made bold decisions and wore cream jumpsuits and could disappear from her family's vacation without losing herself. Later, in the hotel garden, I met Lena Prescott. She was reading at a table near the koi pond, elegant in that effortless, grown woman way. When I sat nearby, she looked up, offered a nod, and said, "You've got the look." What look? She smiled. The look of someone who walked away from something she should have left years ago. We got wine, talked for an hour. She was a lawyer from Charlotte, also traveling solo. Divorced, 2 grown kids, 1,000 stories. When I told her mine, she didn't gasp or judge. She just said, "Good, about time." That night, I slept without dreaming. Not because I was empty, but because I was finally at peace. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't care if they texted. I didn't care if they showed up at my door with keys and guilt and apologetic smiles. I had walked away. And walking away, it turned out, wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. 3 days. That's how long it took for them to find me. 3 days of ignored calls, unread texts, and carefully curated Instagram stories that made me look happy, and in many ways, I was. But that didn't stop the pounding in my chest when Amber, the hotel receptionist, found me on my way back from a morning kayaking excursion. "Ms. Whitaker," she asked gently, lowering her voice, "you have visitors. They're in the front lounge." I knew before I turned the corner. And there they were. My parents sat stiffly on one of the antique sofas in the Ocean View Hotel sunroom, looking profoundly out of place in a space designed for elegant solitude and hushed civility. Harper paced in front of the window, her phone clutched tightly in one hand. Miles sat beside their daughter Sienna, who was busy munching on what looked like her second complimentary cookie. I didn't move. Amber, bless her heart, gave me a sympathetic look. "They've been waiting about an hour," she whispered. "I would have called sooner, but they insisted." I nodded once, offered a tired smile, and walked toward them like I was headed into a war zone. Not angry, just armored. My mother was the first to rise. "Sloan, thank goodness," she said, her hands fluttering like she wasn't sure whether to hug me or scold me. "Where have you been? We've been worried sick." "I told you I was safe," I replied calmly. "You chose not to believe me." Harper crossed her arms. "You can't just vanish from a family vacation and expect no one to care." I tilted my head. "That's an interesting claim coming from people who didn't think I needed a room." My dad sighed, his go-to move when emotions entered the chat. "Can we not do this in public?" "We're not in public," I said. "We're in my space now. If that makes you uncomfortable, imagine how I felt sharing a couch in yours." There was an awkward shuffle. Sienna looked up at me, innocent as ever. "Aunt Sloan, we missed you." I smiled, genuinely. "I missed you too, kiddo." Tyler, the tour guide I'd met on my kayaking trip, appeared down the hallway, brochure in hand. When he saw the tension thick in the air, he offered a quick nod and ducked into the garden. Smart man. Amber approached again, this time with subtlety honed by years of front desk gona. "If you'd like privacy, the conservatory is open." "Thank you," I said, grateful. "That'd be perfect." 10 minutes later, we were seated in a sun-soaked glass room that overlooked the perfectly manicured gardens. A server had brought a pot of herbal tea and disappeared like a ghost. It was just us now. No distractions, no excuses. My father cleared his throat. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Sloan. We thought you'd be flexible. You always have been." "That's the problem," I said, pouring myself a cup of tea with a steady hand. "You've always counted on me being flexible, stretchable, quiet." "We made a mistake," my mom added quickly. "We thought 3 rooms would be enough. We didn't think you'd mind staying with us." "Then why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Why wait until check-in for the surprise? Was it convenience? Or was it just easier to not have the conversation at all?" My father fidgeted. "It wasn't intentional." "Intent," I said softly, "doesn't erase impact." Silence. Harper broke it. "You're blowing this out of proportion. You're acting like we abandoned you in the middle of the desert." I turned toward her. "No, I'm acting like someone who's tired of being treated like an afterthought in her own family." Her jaw tightened. "You've always been dramatic. And you've always been entitled." She flinched. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. You get rooms, space, priority. I get couches and guilt trips. And when I finally speak up, I'm dramatic. That's the script, right?" "Sloan," my mother warned, as if this were dinner with company and I was embarrassing her. I leaned forward, my voice still calm, but my words razor sharp. "Let's cut through the polite script. Harper, when was the last time you asked me how I really was? Not my job, not my dating life, but me." She said nothing. "Dad, do you know the name of the project I just finished? The one that got picked up by the State Tourism Board?" His face reddened. "Mom, when was the last time you planned anything with me in mind first? Just once?" Tears sprang to her eyes. "We didn't know you felt this way." That's because I've been trained not to say it. Sienna stirred in her seat. Are we going to fight again? Harper touched her daughter's back. No, sweetheart. Grown-ups are just having a talk. I turned to my niece. Sometimes people who love each other don't know how to show it well. That's what we're fixing. Harper rolled her eyes. So what now, Sloane? You cut us off forever? You live in your fancy suite and post sunset pictures while we look like the villains? No, I said. I'm offering a choice. They all stared. I'm not coming back to that room. I've extended my stay here, but I'm open to shared meals, activities, time spent on equal terms. No more pretending everything is okay while I silently shrink in the background. My mother's face crumpled. We never wanted you to feel small. You didn't have to want it, I said. You just kept letting it happen. Finally, Harper spoke again, this time quieter. I was jealous. I blinked. What? You, she said. Your freedom, your success, your lightness. I always felt like I had to play by the rule book, be the good daughter, the wife, the mom. You got to leave. I left, I said, because I had no room to stay. And in that moment, something shifted, a release of years of tension neither of us had ever dared name. My father cleared his throat again. What do you need from us? Respect, I said plainly. Space, truth, an actual relationship, not a performance. There were nods, hesitant but real. Sienna stood and wrapped her arms around my waist. Will you still come to the dolphin boat? I knelt beside her. I'll be there, but I'm staying here. Later, as they stood to leave, Harper paused. We've booked rooms separately next year, she said. All of us. Even one just for you. I smiled. Then maybe I'll come. As they disappeared through the conservatory doors, I caught my reflection in the window. Still me, but bigger, brighter, unfolded. The thing about drawing boundaries is that people assume it's a wall. But it's not. A wall shuts people out. A boundary shows them where the door is. In the days that followed the conservatory conversation, something unexpected happened. My family didn't collapse. They didn't spiral into chaos. They didn't exile me or guilt me or pretend it never happened. They adapted. Slowly, awkwardly, but they tried. The morning after our talk, I met them at the pier for the dolphin cruise. Harper waved when she saw me, almost shyly. My parents kept their distance at first, as if unsure which version of me would arrive. Sloane the fixer or Sloane the boundary setter? I gave them the in-between version, open but not apologizing for anything. The boat rocked gently as we pulled from the dock, the sun glinting off the waves in dazzling bursts. Sienna stood at the edge, clutching the railing, eyes wide. When the dolphins finally appeared, two of them, gliding like silver through the sea, she squealed in delight and grabbed my hand without hesitation. In that moment, I realized something profound. I didn't need to cut everyone off to be okay. I just needed to stop cutting myself out to keep them comfortable. Over lunch afterward, Harper surprised me. She ordered a second iced tea, pushed the lemon wedge aside, and said, "Can we have dinner tonight? Just us?" I blinked. No Miles? He's taking Sienna to that mermaid show. I agreed. That night, we sat across from each other at a beachside restaurant, plates of grilled snapper and sweet corn between us. The setting sun cast soft gold across the table, the air warm but forgiving. Harper looked different in this light, less composed, less defensive. I've been thinking, she began, folding and unfolding her napkin, about how we were raised, about how I was always the one who followed the plan, and how everyone acted like you didn't because you were rebellious, but really, you just never felt invited into the plan to begin with. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. And I think I resented that, she continued. I envied your independence, but also judged it because I didn't have the courage to do it myself. And it was easier to tell myself you were selfish than admit I was scared. That cracked something open between us. Not a full break, but a fracture wide enough to let light in. We talked for hours about college, about our teenage years, about how our parents, in their own flawed ways, had built a house with love, but decorated it with favoritism, and how neither of us had asked for the competition we found ourselves in. I always thought you had it easier, I admitted, being the favorite, having the house, the family, but now I wonder if maybe you felt just as trapped by those roles as I felt erased. She nodded slowly. Maybe we both spent years trying to win a game we never agreed to play. We paid the check without a fight, first time ever, and walked together in silence back toward our respective hotels. At the crosswalk, she turned to me and said, "You know, Sloan, I see you now." That meant more than she probably realized. The next day, I spent the morning alone, intentionally. I took a long walk on Serenity Beach with Tyler, the photographer tour guide with the sun-drenched smile. We talked about how people curate their lives for others, how family can be both our safest place and our sharpest wound. "This family trip changed things for you, huh?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "but not in the dramatic, everyone hates each other now kind of way." He smiled. "Good, those are exhausting. It's more like someone finally rearranged the furniture in a room I've lived in forever. It's the same room, but now I can breathe in it." Sounds like growth. Sounds like boundaries, I said. That night, I returned to my suite and sat on the balcony with a glass of wine and a journal I hadn't opened in years. I wrote about freedom, about feeling seen, about the difference between peace and silence. One is earned, the other is imposed. On our last full day, we all met up for brunch. Nothing dramatic. Eggs, waffles, coffee, and light conversation. But something had shifted. My father actually asked me about the branding campaign I was launching next month. He didn't zone out halfway through. He didn't redirect the topic to Harper's new kitchen remodel. He listened. My mother sat beside me and said, quietly, "I'm learning. I want to do better. Just keep telling me how." And I believed her. Even Miles pulled me aside while Harper and Mom browsed souvenirs and said, "What you did, it's helping Harper and me too. She's different, in a good way." I nodded. Setting boundaries does that. That night, as they packed to leave and I prepared to stay a few days longer, Sienna ran up to me holding a seashell. "This one's for your new room," she said, "the one where you have the big bathtub and no couch." I laughed, took the shell, and kissed her forehead. At the curb, as the car pulled away, my mother leaned out the window. "Next year, your own room. First one booked." Harper yelled, "We'll send the floor plan for approval." Even Dad waved. I stood on the curb a while, holding that shell until they were gone. Later, I called Dr. Freya Monroe from the suite. I told her about the conservatory conversation, the dolphin cruise, the sister dinner, the seashell, the quiet. She said, "You didn't just speak up, Sloan. You changed the terms of the relationship. And you didn't do it to burn a bridge. You did it to build one that works for you, too." Exactly. Back in New York weeks later, I returned to my rhythm. Meetings, clients, designs. But something internal had shifted. I raised my rates. I turned down projects that didn't value my voice. I prioritized solitude and deep friendship over surface-level networks. I started seeing Tyler, slowly, from a distance, but intentionally. And when the holidays came, for the first time ever, we booked separate rooms. A villa-style setup in the Catskills. My room had its own fireplace and reading nook. Everyone had their own schedule and space. No guilt, no forced group activities. Just family, recalibrated. It wasn't perfect. Harper still had her moments. My mom occasionally slipped into martyr mode. My dad sometimes pretended deep emotion was a cold he needed to sleep off. But it was progress, and I no longer sat quietly, swallowing the old dynamics. I excused myself when needed. I called things out, gently but firmly. I carved space for joy on my own terms. Because I had learned that love without respect is just obligation, and I was done living in obligation. I wasn't asking to be the center of the family, just to finally belong in the circle. Not curled on the couch, not shoved into someone else's plan, not swallowed by their comfort, but seated fully at the table, on my own chair, with my own room, with my own worth. And that, I realized, was more than enough. 6 months later, I found myself sit across from Dr. Freya Monroe again, watching early spring sunlight filter through her office windows and dance across the bookshelf lined with titles like Emotional Labor and Rewriting Your Story. "Tell me something," she said, a pen gently balanced between her fingers. "If last year was the year of reclaiming space, what's this year about?" I didn't answer right away. My mind wandered to the villa we had booked for Mom's upcoming 70th birthday. This time, I'd help choose the location. Everyone had their own room. There was a shared calendar in our group chat, color-coded by me, and no guilt around skipping an activity if you needed space. Progress. Not perfection, but progress. "I think," I said slowly, "this year is about maintenance." Freya tilted her head. "Explain." "Last year, I demanded change," I said. "This year, I'm learning how to protect it, to speak up without flinching, to rest without apologizing, to ask for what I need without writing a whole paragraph of disclaimers." Her smile was soft but proud. That's the real work. It was. Because boundaries aren't one-time declarations, they're daily decisions. Tiny moments where you either reinforce your worth or abandon it to keep the peace. I had stopped abandoning myself. My relationship with Harper was surprisingly stronger. We texted now, for real. She sent me voice notes when Sienna did something funny. I sent her photos of art installations in Brooklyn. We had, for the first time in decades, sisterhood instead of just shared history. Even my parents had evolved. My father, who once flinched at emotional conversations, now asked me things like, "What's something you're proud of this week?" My mother sent me recipes for Girls' Night In and actually let me host without taking over the kitchen. It wasn't magic. It was mutual effort. It was also me letting go of the hope that they'd become different people. Instead, I asked for different treatment, and they responded. Later that night, I sat at my desk reviewing campaign materials for a new travel client. One of the slogans I had pitched weeks earlier had come back approved. "Claim your seat. You belong." I stared at those words a long time, because I hadn't just written them for a brochure. I'd written them for me. I once begged for a seat at a table that never made room. Now, I built my own. Not to exclude others, but to finally include myself. And maybe, just maybe, someone else will sit beside me one day and realize they too don't have to shrink to fit. They can belong, fully, unapologetically, beautifully, just like I do now.
If this story stirred something in you, whether a memory, a question, or even just a quiet, "I felt that too," don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment below. Share your thoughts, your truth, or your own turning point. And if you believe stories like this matter, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because the next chapter, it might be yours. Thanks for staying with me to the very end. Your time, as always, means everything.